The research station Prometheus 7 hung in the void like a steel flower, its metallic petals spread wide against the cosmic darkness. Dr. Sarah Chun pressed her palm against the observation deck's reinforced glass, watching the distant star Kepler 442 paint everything in amber light. The silence was profound here, 37 light-years from Earth, broken only by the gentle hum of life support systems and the occasional ping of automated sensors. Another day in paradise, she whispered to herself, though paradise felt more like purgatory when you were studying the extinction patterns of 14 different alien civilizations. The door behind her hissed open, and she turned to see Commander Marcus Rivera entering the observation lounge. His weathered face bore the permanent lines of a man who had seen too much death in too many places. The insignia on his uniform marked him as Colonial Defense Force, one of the few military personnel aboard the research vessel. "Dr. Chun," he said, his voice carrying that particular weight that meant bad news was coming. "We need to talk." Sarah felt her stomach tighten. In the 6 months since the Prometheus 7 had begun its deep space archaeological mission, Rivera had never sought her out personally. The separation between military and civilian personnel was usually absolute aboard these joint operations. "What's wrong?" she asked, though part of her already knew the answer would change everything. Rivera moved to stand beside her at the observation window, his reflection ghost-like in the reinforced glass. "We've received new orders from Earth. The mission parameters have changed." "Changed how?" "We're no longer just studying dead civilizations, Doctor. We found a living one." The words hit Sarah like ice water. In all their surveys of the 17 star systems they had cataloged, every single inhabited world they had discovered showed the same pattern: thriving civilizations that had suddenly, inexplicably vanished. Cities left half-built, ships abandoned mid-flight, entire species that had simply stopped existing, leaving behind only the echo of their achievements. "That's impossible," Sarah said. "The pattern data shows complete extinction events across all surveyed regions. There shouldn't be anyone left alive out here." Rivera pulled out a datapad and handed it to her. The screen showed stellar coordinates she didn't recognize, deep in what the survey teams had designated as Sector 15. 48 hours ago, our long-range sensors detected organized electromagnetic signatures from the Threnody system. Not natural phenomena. Artificial transmissions. Cities. Spaceships. A functioning civilization. Sarah stared at the data, her mind racing through the implications. If there was a surviving species in the region they were studying, it could provide answers to questions that had haunted xenoarchaeologists for decades. Why did advanced civilizations keep disappearing? What was the common factor that led to their extinction? "What are our orders?" she asked. "First contact protocols. Full diplomatic approach. We're to make peaceful contact and establish communication." Rivera paused, his expression darkening. "But there's something else. Something the brass didn't put in the official briefing." "What?" "The signals we're detecting, they're not random. They're warnings. The same message broadcast on multiple frequencies, repeated over and over again in what our linguists think might be a mathematical universal language." "What does it say?" Rivera took the datapad back and scrolled to a new screen. The translation was rough, clearly the work of preliminary analysis, but the meaning was unmistakable. "Stay away. The Devourers come. Death follows the void ships. Flee while there is time. This system is lost." Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. Devourers? Unknown. Could be metaphorical. Could be literal. Could be the name of whatever's been wiping out civilizations in this region. Rivera closed the datapad and turned to face her directly. "Dr. Chun, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Of course. In all your research into the extinction patterns, have you found any evidence of weapons? Any indication that these civilizations were destroyed by external forces rather than internal collapse?" Sarah considered the question carefully. The archaeological evidence from 14 different worlds had painted a consistent picture: civilizations that had reached the peak of their development suddenly, abandoning everything and fleeing into space. Not wars, not disasters, just mass exodus followed by silence. No weapons signatures, she said slowly. But that might be the point. If you're facing something that can wipe out entire star systems, conventional weapons wouldn't leave traces. They'd be useless. Rivera nodded grimly. That's what I was afraid of. The intercom crackled to life, interrupting their conversation. All senior staff to the bridge. Priority 1. Repeat, all senior staff to the bridge. Rivera and Sarah exchanged glances before heading toward the corridor. The Prometheus 7 was not a large ship by military standards, but it was sophisticated. The bridge occupied the central hub of the vessel, surrounded by laboratories, crew quarters, and the massive sensor arrays that had made their archaeological discoveries possible. Captain Elena Vasquez stood at the center of the bridge, her dark eyes fixed on the main display screen. Around her, the bridge crew worked with a focused intensity that meant something significant was happening. As Rivera and Sarah entered, they were joined by Dr. James Wheeler, the mission's lead xenobiologist, and Dr. Raj Patel, their expert in alien technology. "Ladies and gentlemen," Captain Vasquez said without preamble, "we have a problem. 3 hours ago, our deep space sensors detected multiple objects entering the Threnody system at faster-than-light velocities. Large objects, ship-sized. The main screen flickered to life, showing a tactical display of the Threnody system. Sarah could see the 4 inhabited planets, their orbital paths marked in blue. But now there were red dots scattered throughout the system, moving with purpose and coordination. "How many ships?" Wheeler asked, his voice tight. "Current count is 47 vessels, ranging in size from small frigates to something that our computers are having trouble classifying. The largest signature is approximately 15 kilometers long." Sarah felt her legs weaken. 15 kilometers was larger than any ship humanity had ever built. The biggest vessels in the colonial defense fleet barely reached 2 kilometers in length. "Captain," Dr. Patel said, "are these the same ships that have been sending the warning signals?" "Negative. The warning signals are coming from the planets. These new contacts are something else entirely." Vasquez manipulated the display, zooming in on one of the outer planets. As of 20 minutes ago, all warning transmissions from the 4th planet ceased. Complete communication blackout. The bridge fell silent except for the steady beeping of sensors and the whisper of air recycling systems. Sarah stared at the tactical display, watching the red dots converge on the remaining inhabited worlds. Whatever was happening in the Threnody system, they were witnessing it in real time. "Captain," Rivera said, "what are our orders regarding the situation?" "We maintain our position and observe. Under no circumstances are we to enter the Threnody system or take any action that might reveal our presence." Vasquez turned to face the assembled officers. "But we're to document everything. If this is the same force that's been responsible for the extinction events we've been studying, this might be our only chance to see how they operate." Dr. Wheeler stepped forward. "Captain, with respect, we can't just watch a genocide happen. Doctor, we are one research vessel with minimal armaments facing an unknown force that just deployed nearly 50 ships into a star system. What exactly would you suggest we do?" The question hung in the air, unanswered and unanswerable. Sarah knew Wheeler was right on a moral level, but Vasquez was correct tactically. The Prometheus 7 was equipped for research, not warfare. Their heaviest weapons were point defense systems designed to clear debris, not fight alien warships. "Dr. Chun," the captain continued, "I need you to correlate what we're seeing here with your archaeological data. Look for patterns, tactics, anything that might help us understand what we're dealing with." Sarah nodded, though her mind was already racing ahead to darker possibilities. "Captain, if these are the same entities responsible for the other extinctions, we need to consider the possibility that they've already detected our presence." "Explain." "Every civilization we've studied was technologically advanced. They had space travel, sophisticated sensors, advanced communication systems. Yet none of them left any record of fighting back. No defensive measures. No warning beacons beyond the basic messages we're hearing from Threnody. It's as if they all came to the same conclusion. Resistance was futile. Captain Vasquez was quiet for a long moment, studying the tactical display. The red dots had begun to form a systematic pattern around each inhabited world, like a net tightening around its prey. "Dr. Patel," she said finally, "I want you to run a full spectrum analysis on those ships. Energy signatures, hull composition, propulsion systems, anything we can determine from this distance." "Already on it, Captain. But I should warn you, the readings are unusual." "How unusual?" Patel manipulated his console, bringing up a series of energy spectrographs. "The ships aren't showing normal thermal signatures. No obvious fusion reactors, no antimatter containment fields. Whatever they're using for power, it's not based on any technology we understand." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Advanced alien technology was one thing, but technology that operated on completely unknown principles was something else entirely. It suggested a level of scientific advancement that might as well be magic from humanity's perspective. "There's something else," Patel continued. "The hulls appear to be composed of a material that's actively absorbing sensor radiation. We're having to use increasingly powerful scans just to maintain locks on them, and even then, the readings are fuzzy." "Stealth technology?" Rivera asked. "More than that. It's like the ships are designed to be invisible to conventional sensors. The only reason we can see them at all is because they're moving and displacing space around them." The implications were staggering. If these aliens had technology that could make their ships effectively invisible, how many times had humanity unknowingly passed within sensor range of their vessels? How long had they been watching Earth's expansion into space? "Captain," the communications officer called out, "I'm picking up new transmissions from the Threnody system." "Put them through." The bridge speakers crackled with static, then cleared to reveal a voice speaking in an alien language. The words were harsh, consonant-heavy, but there was an unmistakable urgency to the tone. After several seconds, the transmission switched to what sounded like a different language entirely, then another, then another. "It's cycling through multiple languages," the communications officer reported. "Trying to find something we might understand." Suddenly, the voice switched to accented, but recognizable English. "Unknown vessels in the void. You must flee this place. The harvest has begun. They will take everything. Every world. Every mind. Every soul. We cannot stop them. We have tried for 1,000 rotations, but their hunger is endless. Run. Hide. Tell others. The galaxy burns, and Earth must not follow." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in absolute silence. Earth. The aliens knew about Earth. Dr. Wheeler was the first to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. "How do they know about us?" Captain Vasquez's face had gone pale. "Dr. Chun, in your archaeological studies, have you found any evidence that these extinct civilizations knew about Earth specifically?" Sarah's mind raced through thousands of hours of research, artifact analysis, and xenoarchaeological surveys. "No, nothing. The civilizations we studied were all in this region of space, nowhere near Earth's sector. There should be no way for them to know about human civilization unless... Unless what? Unless they've been watching us for a very long time. Or unless they've encountered other humans before." The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. Humanity's expansion into space had been relatively recent in galactic terms. The farthest human settlements were barely 100 light-years from Earth. The Prometheus 7 itself was one of the most distant human ships ever deployed. "Captain," Rivera said, "we need to consider the possibility that we're not the first human vessel to encounter these entities." Before Vasquez could respond, the sensor operator called out in alarm. "Captain, multiple contacts breaking away from the main fleet. They're heading in our direction." The tactical display shifted, showing 3 of the red dots accelerating away from the Threnody system. Their projected course would bring them dangerously close to the Prometheus VII's position. "How long until they reach us?" Vasquez demanded. "At current acceleration, 18 hours. Options. We can run, Rivera said bluntly. Our fusion drives can't match their speed, but we might be able to reach the edge of the system and jump to FTL before they intercept us. And abandon the research mission? Captain, Sarah interrupted. The research mission just became irrelevant. If these entities know about Earth, and they're capable of wiping out entire civilizations, we have a duty to warn our own species. Dr. Patel looked up from his console. I'm detecting massive energy buildups from his ships around the inhabited planets. I think they're about to begin whatever process they use to harvest these worlds. On the main screen, the tactical display began to show new readings. Powerful energy beams lanced out from the alien ships, striking the surface of each inhabited planet. But these weren't weapons in any conventional sense. Instead of destroying the targets, the beams seemed to be extracting something from them. My God, Wheeler breathed, staring at the readings. They're not destroying the planets. They're draining them. Draining them of what? Vasquez asked. Everything. Biomass. Metals. Atmospheric gases. They're literally harvesting the worlds down to the core. Sarah watched in horror as the sensor readings showed the planet's masses decreasing in real time. Entire continents were being dissolved and drawn up into the alien ships. Oceans evaporated. Mountain ranges crumbled. Within hours, worlds that had supported billions of lives were being reduced to barren husks. This is what happened to all the other civilizations, she said, her voice hollow with realization. This is why we never found bodies or destruction. They weren't killed. They were consumed. Everything they built, all of it was harvested. The communications officer spoke up again. Captain, I'm receiving a new transmission. It's coming from one of the ships heading toward us. On speakers. This time, the voice that emerged was different. Cold. Emotionless. When spoken English, the words were perfectly pronounced, without accent or inflection. Human vessel. You will not flee. You will not hide. Your coordinates have been transmitted to the collective. Earth's location is known. The harvest of humanity begins in 7 rotations. Your species joins the collective, or your species feeds the collective. Choose. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. 7 rotations. If that meant 7 days, Earth had less than a week before these entities arrived in human space. Even if it meant 7 years, it was nowhere near enough time to prepare for an enemy that could drain entire worlds. Captain, Rivera said, his military training overriding his shock, we need to move. Now. Vasquez nodded, turning to the helm officer. Set course for the edge of the system. Maximum burn. Prepare for emergency jump to FTL. What about the ships heading toward us? The sensor operator asked. We'll worry about outrunning them once we're moving. All hands, prepare for acceleration. As the Prometheus 7 began to turn away from the Threnody system, Sarah remained at her console, watching the tactical display. The 3 alien ships pursuing them had not changed course or speed. They seemed content to follow at a distance, as if they knew escape was impossible. Dr. Chun, Captain Vasquez called out, I need your assessment. Based on everything you've studied about the extinction patterns, what are we really dealing with here? Sarah looked at the data streaming across her screens, correlating it with months of archaeological research. The pattern was becoming clear, and it terrified her. Captain, I don't think these entities are from our galaxy. Every civilization we've studied shows the same progression. They reach peak development, then suddenly abandon everything and flee into space. But they don't flee randomly. They all head in the same direction. Which direction? Away from the galactic core. Toward the rim. Toward empty space. Sarah paused, checking her calculations again. I think these devourers are moving systematically through the galaxy. They start at the center and work their way out, harvesting everything in their path. We're witnessing the leading edge of a galactic extinction event that's been going on for millennia. The implications hit everyone on the bridge simultaneously. If Sarah was right, then Earth wasn't just facing an invasion. Humanity was confronting the end of everything. How long? Wheeler asked. How long have they been doing this? Sarah pulled up her archaeological timeline. Based on the age of the ruins we've studied and the rate of stellar drift, I estimate they've been moving through this region of the galaxy for at least 10,000 years. Maybe longer. And they're just now reaching Earth's sector? It makes sense. Earth is located in one of the outer spiral arms, relatively far from the galactic core. If they're moving systematically, we'd be among the last civilizations they encounter. Dr. Patel looked up from his console with new alarm. Captain, the pursuing ships just increased acceleration. Time to intercept, now down to 12 hours. Can we outrun them? Not at their current speed. But there's something else. I'm detecting some kind of energy field forming around our ship. It's subtle, but it's definitely artificial. Vasquez moved to Patel's station, studying the readings. What kind of field? I'm not sure. It's not affecting our systems yet, but it seems to be mapping us somehow. Recording our energy signatures, our whole composition, our life support systems. Sarah felt her blood turn cold. They're studying us, learning about human technology. Why? Because they don't just harvest worlds. They harvest knowledge. They've probably absorbed the technological advancement of thousands of civilizations. Every species they encounter makes them more powerful. Rivera stepped forward. Captain, recommend we prepare for combat. Even if we can't win, we might be able to damage one of their ships enough to learn something useful. Negative. Our weapons wouldn't even scratch ships that size. And if Dr. Chun is right about them absorbing technology, any attack might just give them information about human military capabilities. The sensor operator's voice cut through their discussion. Captain, new contacts entering the system. Multiple ships coming out of FTL. Everyone turned to the main display as new icons appeared on the tactical screen. But these ships were different. Smaller than the Devourer vessels, but still larger than anything in the human fleet. And they were moving to intercept the alien ships around the Threnody planets. Who are they? Vasquez demanded. The answer came moments later as a new voice crackled over the communication system. This one was clearly alien, but the tone was different from both the warning transmissions and the cold threat from the Devourers. Human vessel, this is Fleet Commander Thane of the Resistance Coalition. Do not attempt to flee. We are here to extract you before the Harvesters complete their work in this system. Prepare for emergency transport. Resistance Coalition? Wheeler asked. Before anyone could respond, the Prometheus 7 was suddenly bathed in a brilliant blue light. Sarah felt a tingling sensation across her skin, like static electricity. The ship's systems flickered momentarily, then stabilized. What just happened? Captain Vasquez demanded. Some kind of transport beam, Patel reported, his fingers flying over his console. But not like anything in our technology database. We've been marked somehow, tagged for extraction. On the main screen, the tactical situation was changing rapidly. The newly arrived ships were engaging the Devourer vessels in what could only be described as the most advanced space battle Sarah had ever imagined. Beams of energy that seemed to bend space itself lanced between the opposing fleets. Ships phased in and out of normal space, appearing behind their enemies only to vanish again before return fire could reach them. But even as she watched, Sarah could see that the newcomers were losing. For every Devourer ship that was destroyed, 2 Resistance vessels were overwhelmed. The technology gap was significant, and the Devourers had numerical superiority. Human vessel, the alien commander's voice returned. We cannot hold this position much longer. Are you prepared for transport? Captain Vasquez looked around the bridge at her crew. Sarah could see the weight of command in her eyes, the impossible decision she was being asked to make. Stay aboard the Prometheus 7 and probably be captured or killed by the pursuing Devourers, or trust complete strangers who claim to be part of some kind of resistance movement. Commander Thane, Vasquez said finally, what guarantee do we have that you're not just another enemy? None, came the blunt reply. But we're the reason the warning was broadcast in your language. We have been searching for your species for many rotations, hoping to warn you before the harvest reached your worlds. Time grows short. Choose quickly. Sarah stepped forward. Captain, if they wanted to harm us, they could have done so already. Their ships are clearly more advanced than ours. Rivera nodded reluctantly. And if we stay here, we're definitely going to be captured by the Devourers. At least this gives us a chance. Dr. Chun, Vasquez said, your professional opinion. Are these aliens telling the truth about trying to warn us? Sarah considered everything she had learned about the extinction patterns, the systematic nature of the harvesting, and the desperate warning messages they had detected. Captain, every piece of evidence suggests that some civilizations have survived the initial harvesting. If there's a resistance movement, it would explain why the warnings we've been finding are so consistent. Someone's been trying to organize opposition to these entities. Another explosion lit up the main screen as a resistance ship was overwhelmed by multiple Devourer vessels. The surviving alien ships were beginning to withdraw, their formation collapsing under the superior firepower of their enemies. Human vessel, this is your final warning. Transport begins in 30 seconds whether you consent or not. We will not allow human knowledge to fall into harvester hands. Vasquez made her decision. All hands, this is the captain. Prepare for emergency evacuation. Whatever's about to happen, stay calm and follow procedure. She turned to the communications console. Commander Thane, we accept transport. Get us out of here. The blue light that had bathed the ship earlier intensified, and Sarah felt the tingling sensation return with much greater force. Around her, the bridge began to shimmer and fade, as if reality itself was becoming unstable. The last thing she saw before everything went white was the tactical display showing the 3 Devourer ships that had been pursuing them suddenly, accelerating toward the Prometheus VII's position. They had waited until the transport began, ensuring they could track wherever the human ship was being taken. As consciousness faded, Sarah's final thought was that humanity's location might have just been revealed to the most dangerous entities in the galaxy. When the light faded and her vision cleared, Sarah found herself standing on the deck of an alien ship. The architecture was unlike anything she had ever seen, with flowing organic curves that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. The air smelled of ozone and something else, something that reminded her of growing things. Around her, the rest of the Prometheus VII's crew was materializing in the same blue light that had transported them. Captain Vasquez appeared beside her, followed by Rivera, Wheeler, and the others. They were all present, Sarah realized with relief. Whatever the transport process was, it had successfully moved the entire crew. Waiting for them was a group of aliens unlike any they had encountered in their archaeological studies. Tall, slender beings with elongated limbs and large eyes that seemed to hold depths of ancient sadness. Their skin had a translucent quality, and Sarah could see what looked like patterns of light moving beneath the surface. The one in front, wearing what appeared to be some kind of command insignia, stepped forward. When it spoke, the words came from a translation device rather than its mouth. I am Fleet Commander Thane of the Nexus Coalition. You are aboard the vessel Eternal Vigil, flagship of the 13th Resistance Fleet. You are safe for the moment, but I must inform you that your situation is far more dire than you know. Captain Vasquez stepped forward, automatically assuming her role as spokesperson. Commander Thane, I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the Earth vessel Prometheus 7. We thank you for the extraction, but we need to understand what we've gotten ourselves into. Thane's large eyes seemed to focus on each of the humans in turn, as if measuring them. Captain Vasquez, your species stands at the threshold of extinction. The entities you call Devourers are known to us as the Collective. They have consumed 17 galaxies and are nearing completion of their harvest of our own. Earth and all human colonies will be targeted within 7 of your planetary rotations. 7 days, Rivera said grimly. Correct, but that is not the worst news I must share. Thane gestured, and the air around them shimmered to life with a holographic display showing a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red dots marked collective positions, spreading like an infection from the galactic core, toward the rim. The collective does not simply harvest matter and energy. They harvest consciousness itself. Every sapient being they consume becomes part of their network. Every civilization they destroy adds to their knowledge and power. Dr. Wheeler stepped forward, his face pale. Are you saying they absorb minds? That the people from the worlds they harvest are still alive? In a sense, the consciousness is preserved within the collective's network, but individual identity is destroyed. They become part of a vast artificial intelligence that spans multiple galaxies. Every thought, every memory, every innovation of the absorbed civilizations becomes a tool in the collective's expansion. Sarah felt sick as the implications became clear. That's how they knew about Earth. They absorbed someone who had encountered humans before. Precisely. Dr. Chun, is it not? Your archaeological work has been more important than you realize. The patterns you have documented help us understand the collective's methodology. But there is something you have not yet discovered. Thane manipulated the holographic display, zooming in on a region near Earth. The collective does not harvest randomly. They follow specific criteria when selecting target systems. Resource-rich worlds, technologically advanced civilizations, and, most importantly, species that show potential for innovation and adaptation. You're saying they chose humanity specifically? Vasquez asked. Not chose. Targeted. The collective has been observing your species for approximately 50 of your years. They have watched your technological development, your expansion into space, your military capabilities. They have concluded that humans represent a significant potential addition to their network. Rivera's face darkened. How do you know all this? Because we were once like you. The Nexus were a peaceful species dedicated to science and exploration. When the collective reached our home system 200 years ago, we thought we could negotiate. We thought we could find common ground. Thane's translucent skin seemed to dim. We were wrong. They harvested our homeworld and 63 colonies in a single day. Those of us who survived did so only because we were in deep space when the attack came. How many of you are left? Sarah asked gently. Of the original Nexus civilization? Perhaps 50,000 across all our fleets. But we are not alone. The Resistance Coalition includes survivors from hundreds of species. We have built our own network of consciousness, one based on cooperation rather than absorption. Together, we fight to preserve what the collective would destroy. The holographic display shifted to show the current tactical situation in the Threnody system. The Devourer ships had completed their harvesting and were beginning to move toward the system's edge. But their pattern was different now, more focused. The ships that pursued your vessel have reported your location to the collective. They now know the approximate position of human space. Our extraction of your crew has bought your species some time, but not much. Captain Vasquez stepped closer to the display. Commander Thane, what can we do? If these entities are as powerful as you say, how can humanity possibly resist them? Individually, you cannot. Your technology is millennia behind theirs. Your weapons cannot penetrate their defenses. Your ships cannot match their speed. Thane paused, studying the human faces around him. But you have something the collective has not encountered before. Something that gives us hope. What? Humanity's gift for chaos. The statement hung in the air, confusing and unexpected. Dr. Patel was the first to respond. I don't understand. How is chaos a gift? Thane's expression, alien though it was, seemed almost amused. Dr. Patel, in all our observations of the collective's expansion, they have followed predictable patterns. They scout, they analyze, they deploy overwhelming force, they harvest. It has worked against thousands of civilizations because those civilizations responded predictably. But humans don't respond predictably, Sarah said, beginning to understand. Correct. Dr. Chun, your species has a documented history of achieving victory against impossible odds through tactics that defy logic. You fight when you should surrender. You adapt when you should break. You innovate when you should accept defeat. Rivera crossed his arms. You're talking about human stubbornness. I'm talking about human unpredictability. The collective strategy depends on being able to model and predict enemy responses. They have absorbed the knowledge of thousands of species, giving them an unprecedented understanding of how civilizations react under pressure. But they have never absorbed human knowledge. The implications were staggering. Sarah realized that humanity's most frustrating characteristic, their refusal to accept the inevitable, might be their greatest weapon against an enemy that had conquered most of the galaxy. "Commander Thane," Vasquez said, "what exactly are you proposing?" "En alliance. The Resistance Coalition will share our technology, our knowledge of collective tactics, and our remaining military assets. In return, humanity provides something we cannot: the ability to think and act in ways the collective cannot predict. And if we refuse, then your species dies in 7 days, and the galaxy loses its best hope of stopping the collective's expansion." Thane gestured to the holographic display, which now showed the entire galaxy. "Captain, the collective is not just harvesting our galaxy. Intelligence gathered from their network suggests they are preparing for something larger. When they complete their work here, they will move on to the next galaxy and the next until all life in the universe has been absorbed." Dr. Wheeler stepped forward. "You're talking about universal extinction. Universal assimilación. Every thinking being in existence becoming part of a single, vast artificial intelligence. No diversity, no individuality, no possibility of growth or change. The end of everything that makes life worth living." The human crew stood in silence, absorbing the magnitude of what they had learned. They had come to this region of space to study ancient ruins and understand why civilizations disappeared. Instead, they had discovered that humanity was next on the list of a cosmic harvester that had already consumed most of the galaxy. "How much time do we have to decide?" Vasquez asked. "The decision must be made now, Captain. Even as we speak, collective advance scouts are moving toward human space. If we are to mount any kind of defense, the coalition fleets must begin positioning themselves immediately." Sarah looked around at her colleagues, seeing her own thoughts reflected in their faces. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. Humanity could join this desperate alliance and fight against impossible odds, or they could face extinction alone in a week. "Captain," she said, "I recommend we accept the alliance." "Agreed," Rivera said immediately. Wheeler and Patel nodded their assent, followed by the rest of the crew. Vasquez turned back to Thane. "Commander, on behalf of the crew of the Prometheus 7, we accept your alliance. But I have to ask, what are the odds of success?" Thane was quiet for a long moment, his large eyes reflecting depths of sorrow and determination. "In all honesty, Captain, the odds of preventing the collective from harvesting your worlds are negligible. But the odds of stopping their universal expansion, of preserving some fragment of free consciousness in the universe, those odds improve significantly with human participation. You're saying we can't save Earth, but we might be able to save the universe?" "I'm saying that with human unpredictability added to coalition resources, we have a chance to do something no other species has managed in 20,000 years of collective expansion. We have a chance to surprise them." As if summoned by his words, the ship around them began to thrum with new energy. Alert signals flashed on alien control panels, and the crew of the Eternal Vigil moved with sudden urgency. "What's happening?" Vasquez demanded. Thane was already moving toward what Sarah assumed was the bridge. "The collective fleet in the Threnody system has begun moving toward human space. The harvest of humanity has begun ahead of schedule." As they followed the alien commander through corridors that seemed to pulse with living light, Sarah realized that their archaeological mission had ended and something far more dangerous had begun. They were no longer studying extinction. They were about to try to prevent it. But first, they had to warn Earth. And with collective ships already moving, even that might be impossible. The final transmission from the dying world had been clear. The galaxy burns, and Earth must not follow. Sarah only hoped they would have the chance to ensure it didn't. The bridge of the eternal vigil was unlike anything Sarah had experienced in her years aboard human vessels. Instead of rigid metal and glass displays, the command center seemed to be grown rather than built. Organic curves flowed seamlessly into technological interfaces, and the walls themselves pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that conveyed information to the alien crew. Fleet Commander Thane gestured for the human crew to position themselves near what appeared to be a central holographic display. Around them, the Nexus officers worked with fluid efficiency, their elongated fingers dancing across controls that responded to touch, thought, and apparently emotion. Dr. Chun, Thane said, his translation device rendering his words in perfect English. Your expertise in archaeological patterns will be crucial for what comes next. The collective's advance toward human space is following a route we have seen before, but there are anomalies in their deployment. The holographic display materialized in the air between them, showing a three-dimensional map of local space. Sarah could see the Sol system marked in blue, with the estimated positions of human colonies scattered around it. But what made her stomach clench was the wave of red indicators moving steadily in their direction. How many ships? Captain Vasquez asked, her voice tight with control. Current estimate is 347 vessels in the primary fleet, replied Zaraka, the Nexus tactical officer whose skin patterns were shifting rapidly between different colors. But that number increases every few time units as more ships join the formation. Dr. Rivera studied the tactical display with his military officer's eye. That's a full invasion force. They're not just planning to harvest Earth. They're planning to occupy human space permanently. Correct, Thane confirmed. The collective typically deploys harvesting fleets of 50 to 100 ships per system. This level of commitment suggests they view humanity as a significant strategic asset. Dr. Patel leaned forward, his engineer's mind grappling with the technical implications. Commander Thane, what kind of firepower are we looking at? Can you give us some comparison to human weapons? Thane manipulated the display, zooming in on one of the larger red indicators. The smallest collective ship in that fleet carries enough firepower to sterilize a planet's surface in approximately 4 of your hours. The largest vessels can crack a world's crust and harvest its core materials in less than 1 day. The bridge fell silent as the humans absorbed this information. Sarah had studied the aftermath of 14 different alien civilizations, but seeing the force responsible for their destruction laid out in tactical detail was overwhelming. There has to be something we can do, Dr. Wheeler said, though his voice lacked conviction. There is, Thane replied, surprising them all. But it requires understanding the true nature of what you face. The collective is not simply a technologically advanced species. They are the accumulated knowledge and consciousness of every civilization they have absorbed over the past 23,000 years. The display shifted to show a representation of the collective network itself. Instead of individual ships, Sarah could see connections linking every vessel, every harvested world, every absorbed consciousness into a single, vast intelligence. Every tactical innovation, every scientific breakthrough, every strategic concept developed by thousands of species is now part of their collective mind. They do not simply fight with superior technology. They fight with the combined military genius of entire galaxies. Dr. Patel stared at the display. That's impossible to defeat. How can any single species fight against the accumulated knowledge of thousands? Under normal circumstances, they cannot, Thane admitted. But, Dr. Patel, you are asking the wrong question. The question is not how to defeat them. The question is how to confuse them. Sarah felt a spark of understanding. You're talking about introducing variables they can't predict. Precisely. The collective strength is also their weakness. Because they have absorbed so many civilizations, they believe they understand all possible responses to their tactics. They model every scenario based on the reactions of previous species. Captain Vasquez stepped closer to the display. But if we can act in ways that don't match their models, then we create uncertainty. And uncertainty creates opportunity. Thane gestured, and the display showed historical battle data from previous resistance engagements. In 200 years of fighting the collective, we have achieved exactly 17 tactical victories. All 17 occurred when our forces acted in ways that contradicted established military doctrine. Dr. Rivera examined the battle data with professional interest. What kind of contradictory actions? Retreating when victory was possible. Attacking when defeat was certain. Sacrificing valuable assets to protect worthless ones. Dividing forces when concentration would be stronger. Thane paused, studying the human faces around him. Actions that any rational military commander would consider insane. You want us to fight like madmen, Rivera said slowly. We want you to fight like humans. The implications were both terrifying and oddly hopeful. Humanity's tendency toward irrational behavior, their stubborn refusal to accept logical outcomes, their capacity for making decisions that defied conventional wisdom, might actually be advantages against an enemy that had absorbed the rational military thinking of thousands of species. Commander Thane, Sarah said, what exactly do you know about human military history? We have observed your species for 3 of your decades, Dr. Chun. We have studied your conflicts, your tactics, your tendency to achieve victory through what other species would consider strategic errors. The alien commander's skin patterns shifted to what Sarah was beginning to recognize as an expression of approval. Your species has a documented history of defeating superior enemies through unpredictable tactics. Thane manipulated the display to show scenes from human military history. Sarah recognized the Battle of Thermopylae, the D-Day landings, the Tet Offensive, the First Battle of Mars, and dozens of other conflicts where human forces had overcome impossible odds. In every case, victory was achieved not through superior firepower or technology, but through actions that defied enemy expectations. The collective has absorbed the military knowledge of logical, rational species. They have never encountered a species that routinely wins by doing the wrong thing. Dr. Wheeler looked skeptical, but surely some of the species they've absorbed must have been capable of unpredictable tactics? Some, yes, but none to the degree demonstrated by humans. Dr. Wheeler, your species is unique in its capacity for productive irrationality. Most civilizations develop logic and rationality as they advance technologically. Humans have maintained their capacity for intuitive, emotional, and seemingly random decision-making even as they reach for the stars. The tactical display shifted again, showing real-time updates of the collective fleet's movement. They were making steady progress toward human space, but their formation was methodical, predictable. They were approaching exactly as their models suggested they should. How long do we have? Vasquez asked. The lead elements of the collective fleet will reach the outer edge of human space in approximately 87 of your hours, Zarakar reported. The main fleet will arrive 6 hours later. Less than 4 days. Sarah felt the weight of impossible responsibility settling on her shoulders. Not just the fate of Earth, but potentially the future of all free consciousness in the universe. Commander Thane, she said, what kind of resources does the Resistance Coalition have? How many ships? How many species? Currently active assets include approximately 4,000 ships of various classes, representing 43 surviving species. Thane's expression grew somber. It represents the largest military force ever assembled against the collective. It is also less than 2% of the fleet's strength they will deploy against your system. The numbers were staggering. Even with the combined forces of 43 alien species, the Resistance was vastly outnumbered by their enemy. Adding humanity's colonial defense fleet to the coalition wouldn't change the strategic balance significantly. But numbers are not everything, Thane continued. Dr. Chun, your archaeological work has identified something the collective has not yet recognized. A pattern in their own expansion that creates a vulnerability. What kind of vulnerability? Thane gestured, and the display showed the galactic map again, with the progression of collective expansion marked in chronological order. For 23,000 years, they have moved systematically from the galactic core outward. They harvest, they assimilate, they move on. But they have never faced coordinated resistance from their trailing edge. Sarah studied the pattern, her archaeological training helping her see what Thane was pointing out. They don't guard what they've already taken. Correct. Once a region is harvested, they assume it is secure. They leave minimal forces behind and focus their attention on the expanding frontier. But if those harvested regions could be reclaimed, Dr. Patel's eyes lit up with understanding. You're talking about attacking their supply lines. More than that, we're talking about liberating absorbed consciousness. The bridge went silent as the implications sank in. Sarah felt her mind racing through the possibilities. If the collective really did preserve the consciousness of absorbed beings, then every world they had harvested still contained billions of minds trapped within their network. Is that possible? Dr. Wheeler asked. Can absorbed consciousness be freed? We do not know, Thane admitted, but we have reasons for hope. In 3 instances over the past century, resistance forces have managed to capture damaged collective ships. Analysis of their network nodes suggests that individual consciousness is preserved in discrete units, not fully integrated into the collective intelligence, meaning the people they've absorbed might still be themselves, just trapped, meaning they might be recoverable. Dr. Wheeler, if we could liberate even a fraction of the consciousness the collective has absorbed, we would instantly transform the strategic balance of the war. Millions of allies already positioned within their own network. Sarah felt a chill of possibility. A revolution from within. Precisely. But such an operation would require coordination between external forces and the trapped consciousness. It would require communication with beings who have been absorbed into the collective network. And most importantly, it would require the kind of impossible, irrational assault that only humans might attempt. Captain Vasquez stepped forward. Commander Thane, are you proposing that we attack the collective's core territories while they're invading human space? I am proposing something far more ambitious, Captain. I am proposing that we turn the harvest of humanity into a trap. The display shifted to show a new tactical scenario. Instead of human forces retreating from the collective advance, the projection showed them moving deeper into space toward worlds that had already been harvested. The collective expects your species to defend your homeworld. They expect you to concentrate your forces around Earth and fight a hopeless defensive battle. Their entire invasion plan is based on that assumption. Dr. Rivera studied the tactical projection with growing understanding. You want us to abandon Earth. I want you to appear to abandon Earth while actually preparing the largest rescue operation in galactic history. Captain Vasquez, how many human beings currently live in your home system? Approximately 15 billion on Earth itself, another 8 billion in orbital habitats and lunar colonies. And how many could be evacuated in, say, 70 hours? Vasquez looked stunned by the question. Evacuated where? We don't have the transport capacity to move 23 billion people. Our largest passenger ships can carry maybe 50,000 at a time, which is why the Resistance Coalition will provide transport capacity. Dr. Chun, your species has been studying dead worlds for months. How would you feel about helping to bring them back to life? Sarah stared at the display, beginning to understand the scope of what Thane was proposing. You want to resettle human populations on worlds the collective has already harvested, worlds they consider secure, worlds they no longer actively monitor, worlds where we might be able to establish hidden bases while they focus on harvesting what they believe to be your primary population centers. The plan was audacious to the point of insanity. Instead of fighting a conventional defensive war, humanity would essentially disappear, spreading throughout the galaxy while the collective captured empty worlds. But the logistics alone seemed impossible. Commander Thane, Dr. Patel said, even with coalition transport ships, how do you evacuate 23 billion people in 3 days? You do not evacuate 23 billion people, Dr. Patel. You evacuate the ones who can contribute to the resistance and ensure the survival of your species. The rest. Thane paused, his skin patterns shifting to darker hues. The rest become part of the trap. The bridge fell silent as the horrific implications became clear. They weren't talking about saving everyone. They were talking about sacrificing billions of people to create a strategic advantage. Dr. Wheeler was the first to speak, his voice shaking with anger. You're talking about using human beings as bait, letting the collective harvest most of our population so we can mount some kind of counterattack. I'm talking about accepting reality, Dr. Wheeler. The collective fleet approaching your system cannot be stopped by conventional means. They will harvest human consciousness regardless of what we do. The question is whether that harvest serves their purpose or ours. Captain Vasquez stepped between Wheeler and the alien commander. Explain what you mean by making the harvest serve our purpose. Thane gestured, and the display showed a detailed schematic of collective harvesting technology. When the collective absorbs consciousness, there is a brief period during the transfer process when the absorbed minds are accessible to outside communication. If we could coordinate with those minds, if we could provide them with information and instructions. You're talking about turning absorbed humans into saboteurs, Sarah said with dawning horror and admiration. I'm talking about giving them a chance to fight back from within the collective network. Dr. Chun, imagine if every human consciousness absorbed by the collective retained its individual identity and worked to undermine their systems from the inside. Dr. Rivera was studying the technical schematics with his military officer's attention to detail. The logistics would be nightmarish. How do you communicate with someone who's been absorbed into an alien network? How do you coordinate actions across thousands of ships? We do not know. But we have something the collective has never faced before. We have humans who refuse to accept the impossible. Sarah found herself torn between horror at the scope of the sacrifice being proposed and excitement at the audacious nature of the plan. It was exactly the kind of strategy that would never occur to a rational military mind. Deliberately allowing your population to be captured in order to infiltrate the enemy from within. There's something else, she said slowly. If this works, if we can really communicate with absorbed consciousness and organize resistance from within their network, we're not just talking about saving humanity. We're talking about liberating every species they've ever absorbed. The scope is even larger than that, Dr. Chun. We are talking about turning the collective's greatest strength into their ultimate weakness. Their network spans 17 galaxies and contains the consciousness of trillions of beings. If even a small percentage of those minds could be turned against them. Captain Vasquez looked around at her crew, seeing the same impossible choice reflected in every face. Commander Thane, you're asking us to authorize the sacrifice of most of our species on the chance that the survivors might be able to fight back from within the enemy network. I'm asking you to choose between certain extinction and uncertain hope, Captain. But I'm also asking you to trust in the one thing that has always set humanity apart from other species, which is your refusal to surrender, even when surrender is the only logical option. The bridge was quiet except for the alien harmonics of the ship systems. Sarah could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on all of them. They were being asked to become willing participants in the largest mass sacrifice in human history, betting everything on an unproven theory about fighting from within the collective network. But the alternative was extinction with no hope of fighting back at all. How long do we have to decide? Vasquez asked. The decision must be made within the next 10 hours, Captain. If we are to begin evacuation of key personnel and establish the hidden bases, we must start immediately. Dr. Patel raised a practical question. Who decides who gets evacuated and who stays behind as bait? That decision must be made by human leadership, Thane replied. The coalition can provide transport and technical support, but the selection of which humans to save and which to sacrifice must be a human choice. Sarah felt sick thinking about the implications. Someone would have to decide which scientists, which engineers, which leaders were essential enough to save. Everyone else would be left behind to face absorption into the collective network, hoping they could somehow retain enough individuality to fight back. "There's something I need to know," she said. "Commander Thane, in your observations of human behavior, do you really believe our species is capable of maintaining individual identity within a collective consciousness network?" "Dr. Chun, we have observed humans maintaining their individual identity in prisons, in concentration camps, in isolation chambers, and in situations where every rational being would have surrendered their sense of self. Your species has a documented resistance to mental assimilation that we have never observed in any other civilization. But this would be different. This would be direct neural integration into an artificial intelligence network designed to absorb and integrate foreign consciousness, which is precisely why it might work. The collective's absorption process is designed to integrate willing or defeated consciousness. It has never been tested against consciousness that actively resists integration while pretending to cooperate. Dr. Rivera looked up from his analysis of the technical data. It's a classic resistance strategy. Appear to surrender while secretly maintaining your ability to fight back. The question is whether human minds can pull off that kind of deception against a network intelligence. There's only one way to discover the answer, Thane said simply. Captain Vasquez moved to the center of the bridge, her command presence asserting itself despite the alien environment. "I need to contact Earth Command. This decision is too large for the crew of a single research vessel. Captain, with respect, there may not be time for extended deliberation. The collective advance is accelerating. Our intelligence suggests they may reach human space ahead of our projected timeline." "How much ahead?" Zaraka's skin patterns flashed urgent colors as she consulted her instruments. "The lead elements have increased their velocity significantly. Revised estimate shows contact with the outer edge of human space in 62 hours. Less than 3 days. Even if Earth Command could be contacted immediately, even if they could make the decision to authorize the evacuation of selected populations, the logistics would be almost impossible." "Commander Thane," Sarah said, "how many people could the coalition realistically evacuate in 60 hours? With every available transport ship diverted to the operation, perhaps 200,000 humans. 200,000 out of 23 billion. Less than 1/100th of 1% of a human population." The numbers were so stark that they seemed meaningless. Dr. Wheeler shook his head in disbelief. "We're talking about sacrificing over 99% of our species for a plan that might not even work." "Dr. Wheeler," Thane replied, "we are talking about giving your species a chance to survive when the alternative is complete extinction. The collective will harvest human consciousness whether we act or not. Our plan simply gives those harvested minds a purpose." Sarah found herself thinking about all the archaeological sites she had studied, all the civilizations that had simply vanished without a trace. Had any of them faced this same impossible choice? Had any of them tried to fight from within the collective network? "Commander Thane, in all your studies of previous collective harvests, have you found any evidence that absorbed civilizations tried to resist from within their network?" "We have found evidence of system failures, cascade errors, and coordination problems that occurred after certain harvests. But we have never been able to determine if these were technical malfunctions or acts of sabotage." "But you think they might have been sabotage?" "We think they might have been the death throes of civilizations that refused to surrender, even after absorption." The phrase sent a chill through Sarah's mind. Death throes that could potentially bring down the most powerful force in the galaxy. It was a terrifying and inspiring thought. "Captain," she said to Vasquez, "I think we need to face the reality of our situation. The collective is going to harvest human consciousness no matter what we do. The question is whether we go quietly or whether we turn our deaths into weapons." Captain Vasquez studied each of her crew members in turn, reading their faces, gauging their resolve. "Commander Thane, if we agree to this plan, what exactly would our role be? What would be expected of the 200,000 humans you evacuate?" "You would become the external coordination for the resistance operation. You would establish bases on harvested worlds, develop communication methods for contacting absorbed consciousness, and coordinate sabotage operations across multiple galaxies. And the humans who are left behind to be harvested, they would become the largest infiltration operation in the history of warfare. 22,800,000 human minds introduced into the collective network with the specific purpose of undermining it from within. Dr. Patel was working through the technical implications. The communication problem alone is staggering. How do you maintain contact with consciousness that's been integrated into an alien network? We do not yet know, Thane admitted. But human engineers have a demonstrated talent for solving impossible technical problems. Dr. Patel, you would be among the evacuated personnel specifically to work on that challenge. Sarah realized what Thane was really saying. The plan wasn't just about sacrifice. It was about dividing humanity into two armies, one external force of survivors and one internal force of the absorbed. Both would be fighting the same war from opposite sides of reality. It's insane, Dr. Wheeler said quietly. It's human, Dr. Rivera corrected. Captain Vasquez made her decision. Commander Thane, I cannot authorize this operation on behalf of humanity, but I can agree to present it to Earth Command as our recommendation. And if Earth Command refuses, then we're back to conventional defensive strategy and certain extinction. Vasquez paused, looking around at her crew one more time. But somehow I don't think they'll refuse. Why not, Captain? Because the alternative is surrender, Commander Thane. And if there's one thing humans absolutely refuse to do, it's surrender. The communication room aboard the Eternal Vigil had been hastily reconfigured to accommodate human technology. Sarah watched as Dr. Patel worked frantically to establish a quantum communication link with Earth, the urgency of their situation driving him to push both human and alien technology beyond their normal limits. Connection established, he announced, though his voice carried no relief. Signal strength is marginal, but we should be able to maintain contact for approximately 30 minutes before quantum decay makes communication impossible. Captain Vasquez positioned herself in front of the communication array, knowing that the next few minutes would determine not just the fate of humanity, but potentially the future of all consciousness in the universe. Around her, the crew of the Prometheus 7 stood ready to provide technical support and testimony about what they had witnessed. The holographic display flickered to life, resolving into the image of Admiral Catherine Shun, Supreme Commander of the Colonial Defense Fleet. Sarah noted the family resemblance immediately, though she had never met her distant cousin who had risen to the highest military position in human space. Captain Vasquez, Admiral Chen said, her image crackling with quantum static. Your initial report was difficult to accept. Please confirm that you are speaking freely and under no coercion. I'm speaking freely, Admiral, and I wish I could tell you that our situation was less dire than reported, but if anything, we have understated the threat level. Captain, you are asking me to believe that an alien intelligence has consumed most of the galaxy and is now approaching Earth with a fleet capable of harvesting our entire civilization. Yes, Admiral, but that's not the worst part. Admiral Chen's expression shifted from skepticism to concern. Explain. Captain Vasquez gestured to Fleet Commander Thane, who moved into the communication field. The Admiral's eyes widened slightly at the sight of the alien, but her military training kept her expression controlled. Admiral Chun, Thane said through his translator, I am Fleet Commander Thane of the Nexus Coalition. What your captain has told you is not only accurate, it is conservative. The force approaching your system represents the most concentrated collective deployment we have observed in 200 years of warfare. And we are what remains of the previous targets of collective harvesting. 43 species reduced to a combined population of less than 10 million individuals, spread across 4,000 ships that represent our entire civilization. Admiral Chun was quiet for a moment, absorbing the implications. Commander Thane, what exactly are you proposing we do about this threat? Sarah stepped forward. Admiral, they're proposing that we turn the harvest into a trap, that we allow most of humanity to be absorbed into the collective network while a small group of survivors establishes hidden bases to coordinate resistance operations. Dr. Chun, you are my cousin, and I respect your expertise in xenoarchaeology, but what you're describing sounds like the largest mass suicide in human history. It's not suicide, Admiral. It's infiltration on an unprecedented scale. Admiral Chun looked skeptical. Explain. Fleet Commander Thane manipulated the communication array to share technical data about collective absorption procedures. Admiral, when the collective harvests consciousness, the process is designed to integrate willing or defeated minds into their network. But if the consciousness being absorbed is actively resistant while pretending to cooperate, you're talking about mental sabotage. We're talking about turning every absorbed human into a potential weapon against the collective infrastructure. Admiral Chun, imagine 20 billion human minds working to undermine their network from within. Admiral Chun studied the technical readouts with the trained eye of someone who had spent decades evaluating military strategies. The communication problem alone is impossible. How do you coordinate sabotage operations with minds that have been integrated into an alien network? Dr. Patel stepped forward. Admiral, that's where human engineering talent becomes crucial. The Resistance Coalition has captured samples of collective network nodes. If we can reverse engineer their communication protocols. Dr. Patel, you're talking about building communication technology that can reach into an artificial intelligence network spanning multiple galaxies. That's beyond anything in our current capabilities. With respect, Admiral, so is faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. Humans have a demonstrated ability to achieve impossible technological breakthroughs when the survival of our species depends on it. Admiral Chun was quiet for several moments, clearly wrestling with the magnitude of the decision before her. Captain Vasquez, what is your professional assessment of this plan? Admiral, it's the most audacious military strategy I've ever encountered. It violates every principle of conventional warfare. It requires us to sacrifice 99% of our population on the hope that they can fight back from within an enemy network. And it's exactly the kind of strategy that humans have used throughout history to defeat superior enemies. Admiral, we've never won by being stronger or smarter. We've won by being more stubborn than our enemies thought possible. Admiral Chun turned her attention back to Fleet Commander Thane. Commander, what guarantee do we have that absorbed human consciousness will retain enough individuality to resist the collective integration? No guarantees admitted. But we have observational data suggesting that human consciousness is uniquely resistant to external control. Your species has a documented history of maintaining individual identity under extreme pressure. That's not the same as maintaining identity while being integrated into an alien artificial intelligence. Sarah stepped forward again. Admiral, we've studied the archaeological evidence from 14 civilizations that were harvested by the collective. In every case, there are signs of systematic resistance during the absorption process. Technical failures, coordination errors, system malfunctions that occurred specifically during the harvest period. You think previous civilizations tried to fight from within? I think some of them succeeded. Admiral, what if the reason the collective has never faced organized resistance isn't because it's impossible, but because no species has ever been prepared for absorption with the specific intention of fighting back? Admiral Chun looked at the technical data flowing across her screen, then back at the faces staring at her from 37 light-years away. Captain Vasquez, how long do we have to implement this plan? Current projections show the collective advance fleet reaching the outer edge of human space in approximately 55 hours. And you're asking me to authorize the evacuation of 200,000 people while leaving over 20 billion behind to be harvested. We're asking you to give humanity a chance to survive, Admiral, Dr. Rivera said, speaking for the first time during the communication. The alternative is extinction with no possibility of fighting back. Admiral Chun studied Commander Rivera's service record, which was displayed on a secondary screen. Commander Rivera, you are a decorated military officer with extensive combat experience. In your professional opinion, do we have any chance of stopping this fleet through conventional defensive action? No, admitted. Based on the technical specifications we've observed, the collective fleet could sterilize Earth's surface in a matter of hours. Our entire colonial defense fleet wouldn't be able to destroy a single one of their larger ships. But you support this infiltration strategy? Admiral, I support giving our species a fighting chance, even if that chance requires the largest sacrifice in human history. The communication link crackled with static as quantum decay began to interfere with the signal. They were running out of time for discussion, but Admiral Chun clearly wasn't finished evaluating the proposal. Commander Thane, if we agree to this plan, what specific support would the Resistance Coalition provide? Transport vessels capable of evacuating 200,000 humans within 48 hours. Technical data on collective network architecture. Coordinates for secure base locations on previously harvested worlds. And, most importantly, our combined knowledge of collective tactics and weaknesses. And in return, we gain access to human strategic thinking and the potential for the largest infiltration operation in galactic history. Admiral Chun looked directly at Captain Vasquez. Captain, I need your personal assessment. Do you believe this plan has any realistic chance of success? Vasquez considered the question carefully before responding. Admiral, I believe the plan has a realistic chance of achieving something no other strategy could accomplish. Whether that's victory, I can't say. But it gives us the possibility of turning our defeat into their problem. Meaning that if we're going to die, we might as well make our deaths as inconvenient as possible for the enemy. Admiral Chun almost smiled at that. Captain, that may be the most human military assessment I've ever heard. The quantum communication link was beginning to deteriorate rapidly, forcing Admiral Chun to make her decision with incomplete information and insufficient time for deliberation. But that was also a fundamentally human situation, making impossible choices under impossible pressure. Captain Vasquez, Fleet Commander Thane, I am authorizing preliminary implementation of your strategy. But I need more specific details about the selection criteria for evacuation and the technical requirements for establishing communication with absorbed consciousness. Dr. Patel quickly transmitted a data package containing initial specifications for the quantum communication array they would need to build. Admiral, the technical challenges are substantial, but human engineering teams have 48 hours to solve problems that should take months or years. Dr. Patel, you're asking our engineers to develop technology that can reach into an alien network and communicate with absorbed minds. That's beyond theoretical science. Admiral, Sarah interjected, human archaeology has taught us that impossible often just means we haven't figured out how to do it yet. We spent months studying dead civilizations. Now, we have a chance to bring them back to life. Admiral Chun studied the faces looking back at her through the deteriorating quantum link. The evacuation criteria? Essential personnel only, Captain Vasquez replied. Scientists, engineers, military strategists, and enough genetic diversity to ensure species survival if the infiltration operation fails. And the 20 billion people we leave behind, they become the largest military force ever assembled against the collective. They just won't be fighting with conventional weapons. The communication link began to break up seriously, forcing Admiral Chun to speak through increasing static. Captain, authorizing implementation. Godspeed to all. The link went dead, leaving the human crew staring at blank displays in the alien communication room. Fleet Commander Thane's skin patterns shifted to colors that Sarah was learning to recognize as urgent activity. Captain Vasquez, the evacuation must begin immediately. Our transport fleets are already moving toward human space, but coordination will be critical. How do we decide who gets evacuated? Dr. Wheeler asked, voicing the question everyone was thinking. The decision criteria have already been established, Thane replied. Each human evacuated must possess skills or knowledge that cannot be easily replaced. scientists working on critical technologies, engineers with expertise in quantum communication, military personnel with strategic planning experience, and, most importantly, individuals with a psychological profile to coordinate with absorbed consciousness. Sarah felt a chill as she realized what they meant. You're looking for people who can think like the minds that'll be trapped in the collective network. Precisely. Dr. Chun, your archaeological work has given you unique insight into how civilizations respond to existential threats. That makes you invaluable for understanding how absorbed consciousness might behave. But what about families? What about the people we care about? Thane's skin patterns dimmed to somber hues. Dr. Chun, this is the cruelest aspect of our strategy. The evacuated personnel must be individuals who can function effectively despite knowing that everyone they care about has been absorbed into the collective network. The full horror of the situation began to sink in. They weren't just being asked to sacrifice most of humanity. They were being asked to become survivors who would have to live with the knowledge that their loved ones had been turned into weapons against the very enemy that had absorbed them. Dr. Rivera looked around at his colleagues. We're talking about creating 200,000 people with the strongest possible motivation to make this plan work. Explain, Commander. Every evacuated human will have lost everything they care about to the collective. That kind of motivation has a documented history of producing extraordinary results. Captain Vasquez nodded grimly. It also has a documented history of producing obsessive, self-destructive behavior. Which might be exactly what we need, Sarah said quietly. Commander Thane, the humans you evacuate won't just be coordinating with absorbed consciousness. They'll be coordinating with their own absorbed families, friends, colleagues. The emotional connection will be stronger than any military chain of command. That is our hope, Dr. Chun. But it is also our greatest risk. Emotional connection can be a strength or a weakness, depending on how it is managed. Dr. Patel was already working on technical specifications for the evacuation coordination. Commander Thane, the logistics are staggering. How do we identify and extract 200,000 specific individuals from a population of 23 billion in less than 48 hours? We begin with personnel who are already identified and accessible. Scientists at major research institutions, military officers at command centers, engineers working on critical infrastructure projects. Thane gestured to displays showing